Alright, I guess we'll start. Okay, so we are continuing on from last week. So last week we looked at authentication, the first part of our authentication. We talked about gated content, because that's really what it's called. Basically, content that is not accessible without being a member or being logged in or some kind of thing, right? Just basically gated content. So when you think about gated content, we think of things like Netflix or Facebook or Twitter or Amazon, anything that basically requires us to have an authentication in order to access, right? So we looked at that last week. We're going to continue on with that, so we're not going to need to download new starter files or anything. This quiz is from last week, so hopefully you guys had a chance to do it. Nobody's reached out or said anything about it yet. And then the project, right? So we did assign the project last week, give you a chance to actually start working on that project. Yeah, so this lab that's here, I think this is the lab, yeah, it's lab 345. It says part 1, just ignore the part 1 part of it, right? That's the only lab. I can't remember what deadline I gave for it. I think it's April 18th. I mean, it's way in the future, but don't leave it behind, though. Make sure you do it so that I can give you those marks for that lab. What did we say about the lab? Didn't I say we're just going to submit? Yes, we're just going to submit the working example for the authentication parts 1 and 2. So when we're done today, if we finish all the authentication stuff today, then you can just submit that today if you wanted to. If we don't, then we'll need to carry it over into next week. I'm using next week as kind of like my catch-up piece. So anything we are not done, as well as also showing you guys how to do a couple of cool things. So one, deploying to GitHub, right? So we'll talk about GitHub and actually utilizing GitHub to push our code to GitHub. And then also, if we have time, taking our code and putting it on the live server, though that's actually really easy. You guys did that kind of in your HTML class. You just go to the FTP server and push your code up, right? And up it goes, and then it sits there live on that server, and it's live to the world, right? And then you can access it. It's the database piece that's a little bit trickier because we need to be able to connect to the database, which we have to do through that VPN thing. So we'll cover that next week if we have a chance. Hopefully we will. Hopefully we'll have everything that we need to be able to do. Your server doesn't work anymore. If your server has problems and you can't connect to your server for whatever reason, you have to reach out to IT specifically and say, hey, my name is, for example, Manjinder Singh. I can't access my server anymore on AWS. I don't know what's going on with it. Can you help me out? And they'll send you instructions on how to connect to it or troubleshoot it if there's an issue. Yeah. So if you're having any server issues, just make sure you deal with that. Because we'll be moving pretty quickly next week. I don't want to take time and have to deal with IT at the same time while we're trying to figure this out. Well, we can't really, actually, because our lesson is so late at night. So if you're talking to your friends and they're coming next week for that, make sure you say, hey, make sure your server's working. Okay? Okay, cool. Let's see where we're at. This might actually wind up being a shorter class, he says, knowing full well that it's likely not to be. I always make that promise, and then I always break that promise. I'm probably creating serious trust issues with you guys. Alright, I'm going to open this link up because I need my lesson builder. I don't think I have any more pictures or anything to show. I think we're past that phase. Incidentally, there is a little piece in there that I'm not teaching you guys, but I am teaching the other program about Google reCAPTCHA. You're welcome to take a look at that if you want to implement it into your projects. It is kind of a handy thing to have. It will require you to have a Gmail account, though, just a heads up. But Google reCAPTCHA allows you to basically, filter out bots. That's the whole purpose of it. Get rid of bots from filling out your forms. And doing all that wonderful stuff. Alright, I have no idea where we actually are at with this application because I teach 4 classes a week and then promptly forget what I taught. Let's start up our WAMP servers, right? Or whatever server you're working with. Alright, and we'll navigate to localhost. And then I think I have you guys under the comp 1006 directory. Yeah, and then lesson A. Yeah, there we go. Sean's registry. And then I'm obviously going to want to open up my code as well inside my IDE. So I'll navigate to that directory, right click, choose to open with code, and we're golden. There. This does not need to be nearly that big. There we go. Alright, so if I'm correct, the only thing we have right now is that we can create a user. I think that's basically what we got to. So we had it so that you could register a brand new user. Why is that pink? Oh, right, I changed it pink for somebody. Somebody asked me to change it pink. I can't remember who that was. I don't like pink. I don't know why I don't like pink. I don't even know where I put it. There it is. It's under register. Let's get rid of that. Not my color of choice. Oh, right, it was you. It was Alec Tanner. That's true. It's always the person who says, it wasn't me. Yeah, it wasn't Alec. Superman Preet's got your back, Alec. Wasn't him. Well, Alec, you are going to become my user of choice today. Alec Tanner. We're going to register for him. People do this to people, actually. They register them for things, which is really shouldn't be okay. We're going to give you a Hotmail account. Register. Oh, right, we had this weird thing going on, right? Where this is pink, even though it's giving us a nice message. It looks alarming because it's all in red kind of thing, right? So we could fix that. I mean, it is a little tricky to fix. Right now we're kind of looking at this idea where we're using the errors and successes as type, right? And then we can take a look and go through that basically and try to fix the problem. Actually, I can think of an easy way to do that. No, I can't. I thought I could, but I can't. Oh, we can do it. So you know what? Let's fix this just because it's quick and simple to fix. So right here where we have our errors and successes under our notification.php, what we'll do is we'll add some keys to this associative array, and then we'll use those keys as a way to trigger what this color is going to be. So I'm going to just point a key at errors right now, and I'm going to call it danger. And that might seem weird that it's called danger, but I'm going to just use those keys using the labeling system that's already built into Bootstrap. So I'm going to use the same labels to represent those colors. And then for the successes one, this one actually is just success, like so. And then down here where we have our div, so we first need to change this a little bit. We need to go as, we'll say alert, and point it like that. Why do we use type? Why would we use type? We should change that to messages. It makes no sense to be called type. I don't know why we did that. Who made that wonderful decision? This should be type. Alert should be type. There we go. And then where we have danger here, we'll just put in the $ type in here. So now if I refresh, I'm going to have to create a new person though. Actually, I can just register. Oh, you see it didn't work though. Now I've got a big block of things that don't make sense. Alert. That's correct. At least I think it is. Hold on, let's var dump it. If all else fails, just var dump it. Actually, we can echo it out. That also makes... No, I want var dump because it puts it in a little thing. Puts it in a little thing. Let's just make sure that we're getting what we're expecting. Yeah, I'm getting danger and I'm getting success. So those are correct. So alert type is danger, yeah. And then messages as message. That should all work beautifully, but for some reason it does not. Register. Let's see what it looks like. We can always inspect it. Oh, you see, it just literally treated it as a literal string. Oh, right, because I'm being a moron. It helps if we actually treat PHP as PHP. I mean, that always is helpful, right? So now when I hit register, boom, that's much better. Alrighty. That is much, much better. So now these things should work successfully. So let's just try. I'll just register another person here. I was talking to Manjinder earlier, so I'll just use Manjinder. We'll just do manny.singh at gmail.com this time. Oh, and I don't want to have to remember that. There we go. I gave you a new nickname, Manjinder. Your name is Manny. Register. Yeah, nice and green. We're golden. Quick couple of seconds in notification just to clean it up a little bit. I've posted the code there for you. Feel free to copy it and paste it in your, replace your build response boxes. Hope everybody had a good Easter weekend. We have a large family. Not sure if you guys knew this. We have 8 kids. So Easter's always big. Any holiday is big, right? Because we're basically a self-contained party. So my wife picked up a turkey, but a lot of our children are actually vegetarian. So 4 of the children are vegetarian. And then the other 4 are not, and then my wife and I aren't. So my wife picked up a turkey, but only a few of us like turkey, but she got a 17-pound turkey. And so we're going to have turkey for like the next week at least. I have to find eventful things to do with the turkey. Maybe turkey sandwiches. Could do like turkey soup. There's lots of things for turkey. But we solved that this morning. Or sorry, this afternoon, Engineer. It's all solved now. Your redirect loop is good. 81 of turkey goes, yeah. My father-in-law, he doesn't believe in waste in any way. So if he had a 17-pound turkey, he would just take what he wants and then freeze it. And then, yeah, it would be 81 days of turkey, guaranteed. That's how he is with stuff like that. Okay, so we can register a user, and that's all fine and dandy. But we obviously want to be able to do something like maybe log in. That would be super nice. We didn't get this thing working, right? I don't remember doing this. Let's see if we can get in. Oh, we hit a blank page. Okay, so we didn't build Authenticate yet, which is good, because we shouldn't have yet. So that's our next step. Our next step is going to be authenticating our user. One thing to note before we get there is let's talk a little bit about how we actually handled creating our user. So when our user registers, we go through and we run through all of our normalization, validation, and sanitization. We've seen that a couple of times now. We get to the end of this and we have to deal with our password, right? So what are we doing with our password? We're hashing it. What hashing is it's a one-way cryptography strategy, or crypto strategy, or cryptography? I don't know. It's a one-way encryption, right? See, I hate using that word encryption because encryption assumes that you can decrypt. And I mean, technically, if you had a powerful enough computer, you could definitely decrypt a password hash. But it's not meant to be. It's meant to be one-directional, or unidirectional. The idea is that you give it a raw text. It takes that text, runs it through an algorithm, which you define with this password default, and there's a whole bunch of them. If you type in password and hit underscore, there's like a list of different ones that you can choose. The default one that we're using is actually bcrypt. But if you type in default, it just assumes that automatically. And then it takes a salt key that it generates automatically and uses that as part of the algorithm. Using your raw password plus that salt key, it generates this string of just random characters and then stores that. Then when you want to go and actually see whether or not your password matches it, you have to use the other function that PHP provides called password verify. And what that basically does is it takes your raw text password, it hashes it, and then compares it to the password in the database. Yeah, there's a few questions about that. Full disclosure, I stole that quiz from another instructor. I hope it worked okay. I mean, nobody complains, so it must have worked okay. Yeah, I took over her classes for her. She went on mat leave, and I took over her classes for her. I mean, it's all fair. It's all above board, hopefully. Okay, so yeah, so password hashing. Have you guys actually looked at what the password hash looks like in the database? Have you gone into the database to see what happens to the password yet? I mean, why am I asking you? We're definitely going to do it. Let's go to the MySQL workbench, and let's go take a look at what happens to our passwords. So I've been using ASDF as a password for every single user I've created. I have not created a user yet without using ASDF. I did click MySQL workbench. There we go. So let's take a look at what this looks like. That's our insert statements from Enginder's thing. That's the cozy project. So we're under the database, I'm assuming. Yeah, there's my users. All right, so I can't zoom in on the sidebar, but I'm highlighting the users table. I'm right-clicking and choosing select rows, which will automatically select the rows so we can view what's going on. This can't be the right table either. Yeah, this isn't the right table. What database am I using? The registry. Right. It's called the registry. Let's load the registry. Go to that users table and select those rows. There we go. There's the people. So if you look at the database, all of these database entries are actually using ASDF. And I'm going to copy these and just paste them into here so you can see each one. So that's one of them. This is the second one. Stop. Stop selecting things I'm not selecting. And then that's the third one. So what you'll notice is that all three of these passwords are completely different. And the reason they're not different, like the actual raw password is all the same. All three raw passwords are ASDF. But the password that you see here is completely different because the salt key actually changes every time when you put in the new password. So even if somebody dumped our database, if they don't know the salt key, they cannot reverse engineer these passwords. And they don't know visually that these passwords are all the same password. There's nothing telling them that the three passwords are the exact same. We need to add a random string into the password before hashing, am I right? No, you don't. No, not at all. So I think you're thinking of salt keys. There used to be a third option here where you could pass options and then you could pass the salt key. The third option is still there, but PHP has deprecated the option for you to pass your own salt key, mostly because you're never going to generate a salt key as good as the salt key that they generate by default. So it's just better to let it happen. And as you can see, it's already working very well. There's no way to really pin down that these three passwords are the same password, just because of the salt key generating each one individually. So it gets a little difficult. So one thing that a hacker can do to try to hack these, they can't solve it. They're not going to bother trying to decrypt your password because it doesn't make sense, right? It's just annoying. Let me see if I can find it. Reverse password hash. There used to be a website. I don't know if it still exists. Is this the one? Reverse decryption? Yes. It's this guy here. So this is reverse decryption. My God, they could have more frigging advertising on it. There you go. Okay, so the reverse decryption. So the idea is that you stick the password in here and then you can do a lookup. So the hash type is actually bcrypt, which I think is SHA-256. Or it might be MD5. Let's see if it's SHA-256. So I'll take one of these passwords and we'll see if it spits back out ASDF. So it's decrypting it. Can take a few minutes. The reason why it's taking a few minutes, oh, maybe it's MD5. The reason why it takes a few minutes is because it's literally running it through a dictionary. So it takes a password that it has in the dictionary, it does a password verify on it, and then compares it to this string, basically, to see whether or not it can find it. There is a way to do it. I can't find it right now. But there is a site that will let you actually check that. But the benefit of it is more about checking to see whether or not your password is already compromised, right? So when you're choosing a password to sign up for a service, you want to kind of make sure that it isn't already compromised. And there's tons of services out there that will do that for you. The one that I have that I love is 1Password, which you've seen up here inside my browser before. And the benefit of it is when I choose a password for a site, it will actually come back and tell me that that password has already been compromised and exists in a dictionary somewhere. Google will do the same thing for you if you let it. The Google password memory thing that's built into Google will actually tell you if your password that you're attempting to use already belongs in a dictionary somewhere and that you may not want to use it. So when I say dictionary, I don't mean like a dictionary like, hey, I want to look up how to spell penguins. That's not what I mean. It's basically a dictionary. Yeah, exactly. Have I been pwned? That's definitely a big site for being able to check and say, hey, is this password that I use on 6 different very secure sites currently completely just trash? And yeah, if it's on that site, then yep, it's trash. So be careful just finding random sites, though. Don't just go across the internet and go, is my password useless? Is it a part of a dictionary? And start plugging your password into all these different sites. Because those sites themselves could just be collecting your password to add it to a dictionary. So be careful about those type of things. But yeah, so that brings us to Authenticate. So we have this hashing password thing done. So when we go to store it, what we're doing is we're storing the result of whatever this spits out, which just happens to be a string, right? And then we shove it into the database. The database itself is dumb, right? The database is super dumb. It doesn't know that these things mean anything. It doesn't care either. I wish there was a way to increase the font size. What's this little button? That does nothing. Is there a way to increase the font size? Has anybody ever done that inside here before? Increase the font size of what you actually see in the result grid? It's not going to let me. It's not Control Plus, I know that. Anyways, but when it gets stored, all you're storing is a string, right? You're not storing anything else, right? You're not creating anything. The database itself is not doing anything specific, right? Everything that's happening is just happening because you've created that encryption, or that hash, I should say, inside PHP and then store the result set back. So that's all that's happening. So that's cool. So we have our password. We can now authenticate ourselves as a user. I mean, there's definitely more ways to do authentication that are more robust, like two-way authentication or two-factor authentication, where we actually add a second component of authentication, but that's a little beyond the scope of this class. So we're just going to do basic, super basic authentication. Not to be confused with basic authorization. Don't get confused there. All right. Let me just quickly fix my lesson plan here because I'm kind of... I was going to go by my original code, but I'm kind of going off book a little bit. Well, actually, I'm going on book, but off the lesson plan, so to speak, because I kind of also want to introduce parent-child relationships in this class if I can, and I have a thing for it, but I don't actually have any lessons for it. We did registering user. We are on to logging in a user. Alright, so I'm sure all of you at some point have logged into some application at some point. Like, I mean, you're not all like living under a rock. You have definitely logged into an application, set up an application, and then used it. So Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, right? Instagram, whatever it is that you kids are using these days, whatever it is, you guys have definitely signed up to something, except for Alec. Alec refuses to sign up for something. So users enter username, email, and password and click submit, right? So that's our logging in process. Let's take a look at the steps that we're going to do. The user enters in their credentials, right? They click submit. Those user details, what happens to anything we put in a form? What does PHP do with it? Hopefully you guys grasp what we do with that now. PHP takes that information and does what with it? Adds it to a very specific associative array. $_ underscore... starts with a P. No? Nothing? Nada? Or is there a delay? No, it's not server. It's $_post, people. When we submit our form, it sends a post body, right, to wherever our script is going. PHP takes that information and then adds it to the post array. So that's going to get sent to our authentication script. So we are going to create an authenticate.php, which is going to take that information that we just got from the server, from the person logging in, and we're going to deal with it. So on this page back here, I filled in my details, right? And I clicked login. That takes me to the login page. Why don't we just, so we're all on the same page, do a quick var dump of $_post so we can see those details. And just refresh this page, click continue, and you should be able to see the details for that page. So that's cool. I at least have that information. Also notice what happens to the password, right? Even though the password has the little dots in the form, we get the password back as raw text. So that's super important when you go to some random dude's website and they're like, hey, sign up to gain member access to all this cool special content. You need to realize that any information you pass them is visible to them. And they can do things with that information. They can take your password and store it somewhere else. You know, you need to be very wary about just signing up to some rando's site, okay? So just definitely make sure you're being cautious about that. So we're going to take that username, right, which is technically this email address, and this password, and we're going to use those things to be able to look it up. But we don't use the password to look up our user, right? We're not... That used to be the way we used to do it way back in the day before password hash existed. We would take the user's email address and their password. We would encrypt their password, and then using those two pieces of information, we would look them up in the database, and when we found a match, we would log them in, right? Now we don't do it that way. We grab the user's details just by this password, by this email address. We verify that they're in our database. If they are in our database, we grab that user, and then we compare their password to the hash using a password verify. So that's how we set up the whole thing. So let's go ahead and get this thing working. Our first step is going to be to actually connect to the database. So I'm going to get rid of this var post because we don't need it. Goodbye, var post. And we're going to connect to our database, which means we need to require the database and then connect to it. No. So they would never give you a hash password, right? And you can't take the hash password from the post. Is there a way that we can get a hash pass from post 2? I mean to make it foolproof. So we can't see the actual pass. No, because you would be writing the code to do that regardless. There's no way for the person to submit an encrypted password to you. Instead, if you want that kind of protection to give them that feeling of security, you would implement third-party authentication services. So you would use Google's authentication system or Facebook's built-in authentication system in your website. So you would actually set up Google's authentication. The user would click authenticate. It would take them to Google. They would sign in with Google, hit whatever. Google would send you back a token saying, hey, this user is logged in. Here's their token. You would verify the token in your database that they're actually logged in, and off you would go. That's it. That's the only real way around it. But you have to use a third-party service like Google. There was a talk a little while ago about Google actually taking websites like the one we're building, where we have an email and password field like this, and making those a penalty against you with your login, right? So that login would actually create a penalty, and you would get that penalty, which would drive you further down in search engine rankings just by you not using an authentication server like Facebook or Google. But a lot of people fought back against that. So I think it's on hiatus. I don't know what's happening to it. I think what they want to do is create a standardization system for it, and then basically you have to become a registered authenticator. And if you're a registered authenticator like GitHub or Google or Facebook or whatever, then you can provide your service, and then every other person who's not a registered authenticator would have to use your service. That would be the idea. Well, if it's Facebook, they can actually fill pass for user too. Yeah, that's true, right? Yeah, exactly. Facebook's kind of funny because they have this weird algorithm. I don't know if it's still true, but a while ago they had this weird algorithm where if you were off by one character in your password, they would still log you in, which means they were obviously storing multiple versions of your password. Even if they were encrypted, they were installing multiple versions of your password, which definitely opened it up for dictionaries to get your password closer to being right. I thought that was kind of cheeky that they did that. To create a better user experience, but then to me it creates a vulnerability. So I don't know. All right, let's connect to the database. Yep. We're going to require our connection script, right? Which we should all be used to at this point. Connect.php. That's what I'm going to call it. Instead of PHP, we'll call it php. And then once we have our connect php page, we're going to, we can assign our variable, or we can just use the DBO. I don't really care either way, but we'll assign our variable. I wish my linter, and I might fix it, though I'm probably never going to type PHP again after I'm done teaching this class, but I wish the linter would actually pick up that I created a function called DBO, and so when I type out DBO, it automatically autofills it. That would be nice. It does that for JavaScript. All right, so now we're going to want to create our SQL to grab our email address. But before we do that, let's go ahead and basically deconstruct all of our variables and properly validate them at the same time so we have everything in its valid format, right? So remember, we're lowercasing our email addresses. We did that in the insert.php. When we did our validations, we did string to lower, right? And I think we did it for the email. Yep, right there. So the email is guaranteed to be lowercased in our database, no matter how they've typed it out. So we can go through all those processes and make sure that those are the way they are. We should do it anyways, just in case the user types it in all capitals. We should do the due diligence of lowercasing it and then verifying against it. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is actually destructure these things. So we're going to grab the email, right? And we'll use that input, or filter input is what it's called. And we're going to look for the input post. And we want the email address, right? And then we can validate it. So we can do a filter validate email on the end of it. And we can automatically respond as well. Like, for example, if this throws an invalid email, then we know already that whatever they're trying to do is already wrong, and we can immediately respond with a error. But we don't need to. This whole thing's going to kind of take care of that for us automatically. We also don't want to give too much information to the end user, because if they are a bot, they will try multiple things against our system and then collect those error codes, and then somebody will analyze those error codes in order to better trick our bot, or trick our form, right? So we don't want to give them more information than they need. We also want to lowercase this whole string, right? So this could be a Boolean that we get back and set as our email, which is fine, because we would just be lowercasing the Boolean in that scenario. So once we have that, we are definitely ready to prepare our SQL. So we're going to create a SQL statement, select star from users, that's the name of our table, where email is equal to the email placeholder, because we don't trust anything ever. Even though this definitely will take care of any problematic code, we're still going to make sure we use our binds and right, so that we can guarantee our data is sanitized or properly casted. We're going to create a statement by preparing it, so we might as well do that directly under here. So $statement equals our connection, prepare, $SQL. So there we go. We've prepared our SQL. We're ready to go. So now we'll add our bind. And the first argument is always the bound parameter that's in your SQL statement, right? The thing with the colon. $_post. Nope, sorry. Old notes. $email. PDO, param, and string. So incidentally, I looked this up because I was curious on whether this actually sanitizes the data. So if a person was to type a bunch of script tags in here, and then we were to go through this part here and actually get to this point where we can process it, it won't sanitize those script tags out. However, this will, because this will force the return of the email address, and if it isn't in a valid format, it will actually dump it into here and it won't be valid, right? So you'll wind up with an email false because it isn't in an invalid format. But it is important to understand this is not sanitizing. What it is doing, though, is it takes whatever they've added and it automatically casts it to a string. So it's a literal string. So they can't be inserting SQL injection, but I think they can insert like alert tags and things like that in JavaScript. So they could potentially cross-site script you. I will test that to see whether or not, but I'm confident that that's the case. And we should have another sanitization step if it's any string other than that one. So we want to do the statement, right? Execute. So we'll execute our statement. And then all that's going to do is pull back our email address. And this is where we're going to set up checking for any errors that we might have. We're not really checking for errors in this scenario. We're basically checking to say, hey, does this person actually exist? Because if they exist, then we'll go ahead and do whatever we need to do. So we can do that by simply doing a fetch, which will allow us to be able to check to see if they are available, right? So we should assign them, right? So we'll do user equals $statement fetch, like so. Fetch will return false if the person doesn't exist. Otherwise, it will return them as the record. And I think we need to add the PDO fetch ASOC in here. Yeah. So that it guarantees to return as an associative array. Otherwise, it returns as an array, which is kind of annoying. So that gives us the user. So we should be just saying get user, not check for errors. Get user. Then we're going to check to see if we have the user. So if $user, and we can say that because if this returns back and it doesn't have a user, it will return false and store it in here. So this will be false. So if false means this will never execute. Otherwise, if we have the user, we can go ahead and verify to see if their password is available. So what would probably be a smart idea is to create a variable called authorized and currently set it to false. Okay? So we're going to say this user is currently set to false. Now we can do the password verify and see if they're verified. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to do authorized equals password verify. And password verify will actually return a Boolean value, which means if it's not true, it will keep this as false. Otherwise, it will return it and set it to true for us. So password verify, the first argument, which I can't remember, is the raw password. That's the first value. So the raw password will be our $_post password, I guess. So why don't we go grab that because we didn't do that. So we'll do $password up here equals filter input. And this thing already knew what I was doing. That's funny. And we'll use that up there. So I did that just under the email address. I'm just grabbing it. Don't add any filters to it because you don't want to modify the password in any way. And then I'm going to pass the password here as the first argument. And then the second argument is the hash itself, which I grab from the user. Like so. Right? So I get my email, right? I filter it, make sure it's a valid email. I pass that on through. This is either going to be their valid email or it's going to be a string called false. Either way, it's good enough. Then I run my select statement, looking in the database for that email address. If this was string false, I'm not going to find anybody in the database called false, so it will fail, right? But if it's the proper email address, I will find the user, and I have a proper email address in here. Then I'm going to connect. Let's take away this thing. That's incorrect. Then I'm going to connect, right, and run my SQL statement, prepare it, which basically sets it up to get ready for the bound variable. And then we bind that parameter to it. Then we execute the statement. So far, we're golden. We've executed the statement. Everybody is happy. Then we fetch the user from the statement. If the statement winds up not returning any user, that's fine. This will be false, right? $user will be false. We create a temporary flag variable, just basically to hold our status, and we set it to false. We pretend that the user is not logged in. We check to see if the user record exists. If it exists, then we verify their password. Password verify returns a Boolean, either true or false. Either this password, this raw password, will match the go away. It will either this raw password will match the hash password or it won't. And you might be like, well, how does the raw password match the hash password? It's because password verify will actually go through, hash your new password, and make the comparison to see whether or not the two match. If everything is false, I'm going to get rid of all this garbage. If everything is false, then obviously we need to respond with an error, right? So if $authorized, right? Respond with an error. Otherwise, right, which we can literally just return under here, we're going to set a header and return back to our to some page. Some kind of page. I mean, why don't we return to profile.php? Because that will be our authenticated page anyways. And then we're going to exit just to guarantee that there's no continuing scripts afterwards. It's a good habit to get into. Otherwise, we want to return back and tell them they're not logged in. We should also add a session variable here. So, actually, we need a session start. So why don't we add that? Let's add it above here so that we can take advantage of it. There we go. So here we'll add underscore session. And I think I called it successes. Yep. And we'll add a new message to it. You have been successfully logged in. That's good, right? With a period at the end of it. Proper sentence. Otherwise, I accidentally hit the wrong button. I ended up losing my keyboard. I have a keyboard that can connect to multiple devices, and it has these buttons at the top, 1, 2, and 3, and those are the 3 different devices that you have. And every so often when I go to hit a number or something else or tab, I sometimes hit one of those buttons, and then I lose track of my keyboard. Senior moments. Alright, so this is session errors equals your login password combination could not be found. So you might be like, well, why aren't we telling them specifically what the problem is? And the reason is because we want to be vague intentionally. And the reason why we're being vague intentionally is because we want them to enter in that information and not know that it was specifically their login. Because then they'll be like, okay, cool, my login worked, but the password didn't work. Okay, so now I'll keep that login and try these dictionary of passwords. Or the password worked, but the login didn't work, so I'll try this dictionary of email addresses. We want to give them a very vague amount of information. And we also have the option to be jerks. We can either force them to enter the email address again in the future, or we can store the form variable and allow it to autofill. We're going to store the form variable and allow it to autofill, but we won't fill their password. Actually, we don't care. It doesn't matter. We're sending their password back to them, so I don't care. So we'll call this form variables or form values like we did last week. $_post, right? So that will set those. And then we're ready to do our redirect, which is really just the header information. So we're going to relocate to login.php because they need to go fix it. And we're going to exit, and that's super important because if you don't exit, you're going to wind up creating the success message and then relocating to profile.php. So you definitely have to exit there. The other one's kind of optional, but I would do it anyways just to be in the habit of it. Alright, I think this is definitely a paste bin worthy file. There you go. And let's see if it worked. If I hit refresh, hit continue. Oh, your login password combination cannot be found, dude. Let's try it again. .com, ASDF, login. Nope. Nope. Things are bad. Didn't find my user. Maybe I didn't use ASDF. Maybe I used test. Because sometimes I use test. Nope. Uh-oh. I bet you we have an issue. Let's try the one I set up earlier. Gmail.com, ASDF. Oh, no, it is working. Haha. Successfully logged in. I guess I don't have a password. No, I don't have an ASDF. That's why. Didn't have a user called that. So it is working. It's actually working in both scenarios, right? We're testing the fact that it fails and we're testing the fact that it works. So right now this says undefined variable user in CWAMP64 on line 32, blah, blah, blah. We need to go through that and fix that, but that's cool. I think I mentioned this before. I love my SodaStream. I really like Coca-Cola. I love Coca-Cola, but Coca-Cola doesn't love me because I've got diabetes, so I can't do Coca-Cola. So I do Diet Coke, but I don't want the caffeine because the caffeine is nutty and it's hard to deal with and it keeps me awake all night. So I like that the SodaStream has caffeine free, which is cola, so I drank that. Yeah, you know what will happen? It will literally go everywhere. If I put milk in the SodaStream, it will literally just go everywhere. That's what happens. You can't even put the syrup in the stupid SodaStream before you run the before you run the SodaStream, because if the soda's in there, it seems to change the density enough that it causes it to overflow all over the place. So the only way to do it is to run pure water in the SodaStream, let it put in the carbonation. Then you have to tilt your bottle on its side and pour your soda, your syrup in, and then mix it around. That's the only way to do it. And you don't want to just keep the bottle straight up and pour it in. We learned that if you do that, then it just overflows all over the place because it causes a reaction automatically. Return response in connect.php not recognized when it goes into the catch. Yeah, I think we actually dealt with that last week. It's this thing here, and the reason is because this is from our API class, and I goofed up. If you guys go to _connect.php, we can fix this right now. I think what we'll do is we'll just set a session variable for it instead. So we'll do session, and we'll set a start as well. Hold on, let's do session start. Oh, actually, we need to be cheeky here, because that session could already be running, potentially, depending on where we're calling the start. So we need to basically do a session status check first. Yeah, PHP session none. And then if that's the case, we'll set our errors. And we'll just make it equal to $error, get message. And then get rid of that return statement. So fix your catch in connect.php to have these lines instead. Which, I mean, doesn't affect anything right now, but we have one other issue, actually, that we didn't talk about. We logged in, but we goofed up. But I want to kind of show you iteratively why we goofed up. Alright, so make sure you add those to the connect, and then that should at least tell you whatever error you're actually hitting Manjinder. Alright, let's go fix our profile page, right? So if they're not logged in, redirect them, assign the user. So we're going to do that first. We're going to set it up that when the user hits our profile page, if they're not logged in, then they get redirected. And the reason is our profile page is going to be an authenticated action, right? It's an authenticated thing, and they're not allowed to access it unless they're logged in and they're a member, right? We'll just dodge them off to somewhere else. So let's write our quick script to figure that out. We're going to basically go if, right, session status equals PHP session none, session start. And the reason why we're going to start our session is because we need to check a session variable that we haven't set, by the way. What? Because it's an array, and it's not session error, it's session errors with an S. Make sure you don't forget that S. It's an array. So what this is essentially doing is we're assigning an array to this session variable, and then also shoving a value into the array. That's what we're doing. Make sense? Yeah. Okay. So in profile.php, we want to start our sessions, and the way we're going to check to see if they're logged in is we're going to check the session variables to see if we have a user. And if the user is there, then we'll say, yep, you're logged in, and off we'll go. So let's check that first. So if, and we'll do, sorry, I guess we'll do is set. I like is set. $_session user. So we're saying if you're not set, then what are we going to do? We're going to redirect them. So we'll set a location. And we'll send them to the login.php page, right? You could send them to register as well. Either one would work. And then we're going to exit our script. Now we should also send kind of a nasty, well, not a nasty message, but we should send a message. You're not logged in. I mean, that's a good one, right? And once you've done that, you can go ahead and hit refresh, and sure enough, it's just going to knock you there. And if you try to go to profile.php, it's just going to keep dumping you there. So we just basically blocked this page. Just with that little chunk of code, we blocked this page. They have no way to access this page right now. And they can't set their own session user. That is not something that they're capable of doing. So they can't just be like, okay, well, I'll just create my own session variable. So interestingly enough, under application, there's like a session storage, and yeah, you can add a new thing. So I'll create user, and I'll call them Tommy. There we go. I created my own session variable. Now I'm going to try to go to profile. Boom, doesn't work. Why? Because the session variables that are stored here are not the same as session variables that are stored on your server, right? They are two different session variables. These last for the lifespan as well you're on the site. The second you move from this page and then come back, localhost, comp 1006, come back here, they're gone, right? The session variables cease to exist the second you do that. See? They're gone. So that's what they're for. They're meant to only live for the lifespan of whatever you're doing. And they're different. They're client side. These session variables that we're setting, these are on the server themselves. So they can't affect those. That's why they're secure. We can actually set a session user variable. They can't do that themselves. We can guarantee it. And then we can access their profile. If you want to put a mean comment after the user trying to incorrectly log in, just put, "Give up already, you troll, you're not hacking anyone's accounts." Yeah. And then some poor grandmother will call your support line. "Sonny, I'm just trying to access your site and you're telling me I'm a hacker." And she can't even use her mouse. And then you'll be on the phone for 2 hours helping her set up her camera and get her pictures off her camera. That's what will happen to you. So the cool thing is, too, is we have a few options here. We have so many options. We can assign this session user a key, right? And then just use that key to pull the user each time and kind of do always, every single time we're on a page, go do a lookup for the user. I don't really want to do that. I would rather just assign the user's details to the session user, and then we can use them in our page. So this thing that says assigned user, it's actually just looking for the user's first name. So what we'll do is we'll actually create a user variable here and just make it equal to the session user. And whatever data is in there will need to be provided down below. Karen's everywhere. My father-in-law's girlfriend's named Karen. She's not very much of a... Well, she can be. She can be a Karen on occasion. Most times she's pretty fun. She's a little more worldly than most people, though. Like, she's been all over the place. She lived in Burma for 20 years, raising her kids in Burma. She's seen things. Alright, we need to fix this, though. We don't have this session variable, right? We're logging in, but we never have this session variable. People can log in all day long. Right? Log in. Nope, nothing happens. We get shoved back. The other thing to note, too, is we're not dealing with this username issue. Notice that it keeps flicking back, but we do have that session variable called session form. But it's not getting picked up in our login page. We should deal with that, too, at some point. Let's deal with one thing at a time. No, we're not. Not yet. We need to. Not in login, though. Where would we assign the session user, guys? Let's think about this logically for a second. Where would we assign the session user? Wouldn't be in login. Yeah, exactly. Authenticate. Because to have a session user, it means that we have a session in place, right? It means that they have logged in successfully and we're good to go. So we actually want to do it down here, line 39-ish. We're going to create a session user equals, and we can do $user, right? But that's problematic because what very important detail is sitting with this field? What are one of the fields that's in the user table that we're now carrying and assigning to the session user that maybe we shouldn't? We should be more considerate of. No? Their password, right? Their password. We want to get rid of that password. So we can actually delete it. And the easiest way to do that is just to unset it. So we go to $user password and we just unset their password entirely. So add these two lines to your authenticate.php towards the bottom, right? Just above your success message. So now if I don't know why I'm going into Steam. Now I can't get out of Steam. There we go. Now if I go into many.sing, whoops, I need the @gmail. ASDF, log in. Notice I'm now in. It says, hello, Manjender Singh, welcome champion. Your personalized experience awaits for you. And everything is working. And that's because we're now meeting this expectation, right? So the user is there, and we've assigned the user to this value here, which gets used further down right here, where we're saying, hello, user first name, last name, right? So all those details exist. Yeah, yes? So we can log in, but then there's things that we need to kind of consider. Like, if I'm logged in, should I be able to access login still? Because I'm already logged in. So why would I want to access login again? It doesn't make sense that I would access this page and then maybe I can log in as another person, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So we need to be kind of considerate and maybe possibly think of what's a better user experience for this user if they're already logged in. We should kind of make this just disappear. So let's do that. So we're going to go to login.php, and we're essentially going to do the same thing we did under profile here, right? We're going to check to see if the session already exists. We still need to do this stuff as well. But let's do the first bits. So if session status, you can smell an if coming? No ifs. Well, yeah, I guess there is an if. Yeah, you're right. Look at an if right there. So if the session status, we're going to start our session. We're going to check to see if the user is logged in, but this time we're not doing not. We're going underscore server user. So if there is a user, and we're just going to bounce them, right? We're not going to send them a message. We're just going to bounce them to another page. And I think the best page to send them to is the profile page. So we'll just say if the user is there, header, and not login, because that would cause a redirect loop, right? We don't want to do that. So profile.php, and we'll exit. So we'll just send them back to the profile page. They're already logged in. We're good to go. Hit refresh. What? Undefined index user. Oh, we need to do an is set, sorry. If it's already set, then we'll do that. Okay. And for some reason it's not set, which makes no sense because I'm positive we set it. Oh, session. Yes. Sorry, you're correct. It's session. I was just about to try to go, hey, wait a minute. Why is that not working? Wait a minute. There it goes. Off it goes. If you're wondering why there's a slight delay on this page loading, I have this little box here that's supposed to load an image, and it's not. It's this avatar API thing, and it's supposed to load up an image, and it looks like it's there, but it's not there. I had to replace this like cutesy avatar thing that I had before. Alright, so we're here. We can click logout, but it doesn't actually do anything, right? We can't access the login.php page anymore, which makes sense because you shouldn't be able to. But we do need to fix some things. We want to fix these form value issues. There's a couple of things on the front we want to fix, but we also want to be able to log out. But I think what we'll do is we'll take a small break. We'll take 15 minutes, and then after our 15 minutes is done, we'll get back to it, and we'll just work straight through. I think we're going to be done pretty early, actually. We'll probably be done around about 9:10, so not too bad. All right, so let's go ahead and take a break, and then, yeah, we'll get back to it. Stuff. Let's move that over there. Get this thing out of my face. Let's open the chat window so I can see people's. If I do wind up teaching again in the future, I am definitely not using WebEx. I think I'd rather use Zoom. So treat it like a drawer that we open when we want and take data and empty it while moving to a new place. Yes, that's a great analogy, actually. Yeah, it's like a drawer. You already have this chest of drawers. It just exists there, and you open the drawer, you put something in, you close it. It's still going to be there the next time you open the drawer, right? However, if you leave and burn your house down and get a new house, then you're going to have to deal with the whole new drawer. So that would be the equivalence to closing your browser, would be leaving and burning your house down. I didn't really have a better example. I couldn't think of something off the top of my head. Okay, so you move. That's a better... No, because the session is gone. You have to get rid of the chest of drawers, and unfortunately that's a dark moment in your time. Yeah. Alright, great. I can't wait to see the comments inside my next review. Sean talked about burning houses down as a way to deal with closing sessions. All right. Okay, let's move on to what we're doing here. So we have our profile. Everything is good. We need this button to work. Click. Log out. Right now it does nothing. Let me see if you guys can figure this out. We know a user is logged in. How? How do we know a user is logged in? What exists to tell us that a user is logged in? Yeah, exactly. So how do you think we can tell our system the user is logged out? How do we log out a user? It's actually surprisingly simple. Exactly. We just unset that session variable and then the user is now logged out. Could not be easier. Absolutely could not be easier. So let's log out our wonderful user. Let's open up logout.php. And there's a few pieces we need. Right off the bat, we need to start that session or assume the session. I wish it was called session resume because that's really what it is. But session start. And we're going to check to see if they're logged in, right? So is set. Because if they... This is kind of silly. We don't really care. This is kind of one of those moments where you as a developer have to decide whether it's important or not. Because you don't really care if they're logged in, right? The only reason you want to check if they're logged in is if for some reason they navigated to the logout.php page directly, right? So you need to make that decision. Do I give a damn, right? If they navigated to the logout.php on purpose, do I really care? Does it matter to me? Does it change my life in some way? So that's kind of the thing. Currently today, I'm of the mind that if you bookmark the logout.php page, you're likely an idiot, and I don't care. I'm not going to give you a good user experience. Do better in your life. I'm just going to unset the session user. That's all I'm going to do. We could destroy the session entirely. That is an option as well. However, we need to add a session success. So, I don't know. Unsetting the session is less destructive. And then we're ready to do this piece. So, session successes. And then we'll add in our "you have been successfully logged out." And then we can do a header, location, just send them right back to the home page. You can send them back to the login page. Actually, I had a debate with a junior developer about that. He believed that sending them to the login.php page felt redundant. They logged out, so why are you sending them to log back in again? It doesn't really make sense. My argument is that maybe they logged out to log in as a different user, because sometimes you do that, right? But he said it makes more sense to send them back to the home page. I was like, actually, if you really want to get down to it, it makes more sense to send them back to the page they were originally at. So if it's not a public page, then yes, you drive them back to the home page. But if it was a public page, like say an Amazon cart page or something, not the cart, sorry, but like a product page, you just send them back to that page because they don't need to be logged in to look at it. What? No, that's a terrible user experience. How are you going to manage two users though? So if they log in as a new user, how are you going to manage the second user? I mean, it's not impossible, you could, but how are you going to manage your second user? And how are you going to know which context you're looking at? Like, when they access a profile, which user do you load? So you want to log out the existing user, log in the new user, is the idea there. Correct? I'm assuming that's what you mean. Yeah. Log out the existing user, log in the new user. Yeah, you could totally do that. I don't think you need a new button though. You're just creating another interface really for no reason. Yeah. I think we're both overthinking it. I mean, they log out, they log in. I think we're both overthinking it. Yeah. All right. If I hit refresh, this is going to work. I go back to Sean's registry, right? If I try to access that profile page, I shouldn't be able to. Nope, you're not logged in. So we're logged out. Now let's talk about this login page. That is broken. If I hit login, obviously I can't log in. Let's try an email address that doesn't exist. I don't even know what's in this field. Can I see the value of that field? I can see the value of that field. Let's do a little bit of JavaScript and see what's in there. I don't know the name of the field, but I want to see what's in there. And that's going to be an all. And we'll just map the value from it. What are you talking about? Oh, right, because it's not an iterator. That is so annoying. What is it? Array dot from. That's what it is. Bam. It's ASDF. That's the value. See? What did I say? Entirely easy to grab entirely easy to grab passwords, right? Like, those are little asterisks, but this is ASDF, so I know what it is. Okay, so I'm going to try to log in as that. I'm going to hit login, and it's going to tell me my combination could not be found, but it didn't fill in the right information. It filled in the wrong information. This information is coming from 1Password. I want to replace it with the data that I have. So I'm going to go to login.php, right? And we're going to fix this. So we have our session started. We need to assign our our form values. So we did this once already. We already know how to do this, right? We're going to do _ session form values, right? Just like we did before. And then we're going to clear those form values by just unsetting $_ session form values. Like so. Nice and easy. If I hit refresh, it's not going to work. Which I'm actually kind of a little bit surprised about. Do I have the values down here? Nope, that's why, because the values are missing. Alright, so make sure you have this at the top of your login.php page. I'll copy and paste it for you. And then once you have that, we need to scroll down to where the input is and modify this input. So we need to add a value field here. I don't know why there's an extra quotation mark there, but we're going to do value equals, and we'll use our wonderful handy PHP thing. So we'll do $user, and we'll add in the email address. Wait, do we have it assigned? We don't have it assigned. We should probably sign it. Oh, wait, no, it's the form values. Sorry, I'm being dumb. It's the form values. Wow. My double click doesn't seem to work all the time. Sorry, it's the form values or null, right? So I can do either one of those. And then password. Password should just be blank. It should just be empty anyways. I'm not going to prevent 1Password from doing what it does. I have a funny feeling it will fix itself anyways. Okay, so right now it's cleared because I cleared it. Ooh, that's nasty. On line 10. We need to do the or null here as well. Sorry, my apologies. Let's fix that. So that's that variable. And then your input field, which I'll copy and paste because I know they're so annoying because there's just so many pieces in there. There. Okay, so let's try it again. So ASDF at ASDF.com, and ASDF is the password. And we're going to hit login. And sure enough, there we go. That's exactly what we want. We've got the email address in place and no password, which is good. But then if I log in as the other person, so manny.singh, whoops, need the @gmail account, @gmail.com, and ASDF, and log in, I'm at my profile page. Yes. And I can log out. And I can register a new user. And I can log in. We literally have everything we basically need. Alright. One last thing. This is awesome. This means next week we can literally work on posting a live site, which I'll show you. We'll post this as our live site. Set up our database on the remote server. And use GitHub. We can do all three things next week, which will be awesome. There's one last piece that I want to teach you, and that's it, basically, for PHP. And that's relationships, right? Let's talk about relationships. What I mean, though, is relationships between data, right? Not between people. So I'm talking about what relationships we can have between two pieces of data. How do these two pieces of data basically associate with each other? How do they relate to each other? So let's think about different things that have relationships naturally. So authors, for example, what would be a data source or a resource that would relate to an author? What's a good resource for an author? I mean, what do they create, right? That's the easiest way to think about it. Yeah, an author, yeah, you know what, Alec, I definitely wasn't following along that path. I was thinking, like, books. What a noob, right? Code libraries, for sure. Yeah, an author could do code libraries. That's absolutely possible, right? I mean, an author can technically, following what the word means, could code or author a lot of different things. So yeah, code library is entirely possible. And in that situation, you have one author to many code libraries, right? Like, for example, if you really want to get down to it, you are the author that owns your GitHub account, which is many repos, right? So one author to many repositories. So that's entirely accurate. Yeah, no, that's an awesome idea. Undefined index user in line 4. I'll just open up login.php. So you're looking for this one here. Oh, is it blowing up? It's not blowing up for me. Oh, you got it? Missed the is set. Yeah, without the is set, then you're actually checking this variable. You're actually calling a reference to it, and that blows up. It's kind of annoying, but that's the way it works. What you could do, and what I've seen a few people do, and I kind of like it, it's kind of neat. They do this instead of isSet, which is a function call. They do session user or null, which means it will actually return back null. And then they refresh and it works the same way. But you don't need to do an isSet. All you're doing is actually just a quick check, right? It's kind of neat. You logged in with a random password. So you just went, let me see if I can do that. So manny.singh@gmail.com and just some random password and you were able to log in. I couldn't. Something's broken in your code. Alright, so this is my point though. We have authors and we have whatever they authored, right? Or we could have business owner and then the multiple businesses they own, or a collector and the multiple collections they have. No matter how we do this, it doesn't matter. We just basically want to take our user and associate them with something that they've created, right? So let's dive into our database. We're just going to create something super simple in the registry. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create table. No, what is, my God, I'm just going down the rabbit hole here. Hold on. I can never remember how to create a table. But you figure as many as I've created in my life, it would just be ingrained in my brain. But it is not. All right, create table. I'm going to give it a name. It's not going to be users. I'm going to go books. You literally go with whatever you want, but I'm going to go books. I'm going to give it an ID column, so I'll leave that the way it is, but I'm going to create title. And you know what? Just because of time constraints and I don't want to be here all night, I'm going to create the title. I'm going to get rid of the unique key because it's not necessary. And the engine is also not necessary. There. This is the SQL that I'm going to use to create my books table inside the registry. So make sure you've double-clicked on the registry so that you've got that database selected. Or type in use the registry. Either one works. And then I'm going to hit my run. So I've created a books table. Yay! So in my profile page that I have, I'm going to log in here. I'm in my profile page, right? I want to create a new resource, but I basically want the same kind of blocking as I have with the profile. So I'm going to open up profile.php, and I'm going to copy this PHP block at the top here. I'm going to create a new file called books.php, and I'm going to paste that in place. That will just basically make sure that my user is logged in, right? I just want to make sure the user is logged in. While I'm at it, in my profile page, I'm just going to grab all of this HTML at the bottom. I should have just copied the profile page. I mean, that makes the most sense. There we go. And I want to get rid of some of this extra stuff. I don't need this avatar thing that's in here. I don't really care about all this other stuff. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to write... change welcome champion to here are your books. And get rid of this extra statement here. There we go. That's a good starting point. Let me create a paste bin and give that to you guys, and then you can use that as your starting point. There you go. So I did make a slight mistake in our actual workbench. We need one more column in here. We need the author ID or the user ID and able to basically associate the book with the user. And I did forget to do that. If we refresh, the easiest way to do that is by adding the altered column. If we right click on books, there's an option in here to alter the table. And if you click that option, it will open this up so that you can easily add a new field to it. So you just add a new column. I think you do it by just clicking in place. So I'm going to add in user ID, or you can do user ID in capitals, which I'd much rather do. It's going to be an int 11. It's not a primary key. It doesn't auto increment. It won't be unique, but it is a foreign key. Oh, it doesn't give you the option to do a foreign key there. That's fine. This other one it keeps creating, I don't know why it keeps creating it. Delete that one out. And I will just give you this. That's fine. We don't need foreign keys. Where we're going, we don't need roads. So add that alter table to your thing so that it creates the new column for us. So now if I inspect using the table inspector and look at the columns, I have 3 columns there. Incidentally, you can also do, if you ever want to know what's in your table, you can do a describe. So you can describe books, like so, and hit this, and then it will also produce a thing telling you what's in that table. All right. let's grab our books. I know we don't have any, but let's grab the books that we need. So I'm just going to do $books equals. Nope, we'll do the SQL for it first. SQL equals select star from books where user ID equals colon user ID. Where am I going to get that value from? Does anybody remember? Where can I get the user ID? Oops, what am I doing? We're going to need the connection as well. There we go. And then we'll just add it in, right? So DBO, we'll just do it this way. I mean, it's just as easy. Instead of creating a con variable for no reason, right? Prepare, $SQL, $statement, bind param. First piece is the user ID. The second place is the value, which we can literally just grab from user, right? And then we should make sure we cast it as a param int. So that way we're forcing it to be an integer and nothing else. $statement execute, because that's all we need. And then $books will equal $statement. Fetch all PDO fetch ASOC. And there's all our books. Now we should make it so that we can actually create some books. I don't really care about being able to update and delete and all the rest of it right now, because that would obviously take all of class to do. So I'm just going to shove this over to the side so that you have it there. I'm going to create a new file called insertbook.js, or sorry, create book, or new book. That's easy. New book.js. I'm going to drop that guy over here. I'm going to copy this books.php page again, mostly because I want all of the pieces in place here. What happened that it's freaking out? Oh, because I called it JS. Wow! That was a big mistake. You can tell what I've been coding all day. We'll leave all this place in, all these things in place. We don't need all of this. I'm going to give you this file though, because it's just much easier for me to code this fast than to, go through the whole process. Create a new book, obviously. Create a new book. And then obviously I'm going to create a form, right? The action will be to insert book.php, which I'll deal with. The method will be post. And then we'll just create some form groups real super fast. So .form group, the label. I don't care about the for statement just because it's annoying. So what fields did we have? We had title, and we had, so title, right? Oops. Did we only do title? Yeah, we only did title, so I only got one field. Nice. And then we need a button. Button primary. Go. Create. I mean, super quick, right? Am I forgetting anything here? So every book that gets created will automatically be under that author. So that's super easy for us to do. All right, so let me copy this page for you, and I will create a paste bin. Okay, so there's our form. And I mean, if we want to, we could take form values and put them in here as well. That's totally possible, but I don't think we need to. It's one field. It's literally one field. Oh, you need books.php too? You couldn't type that out? I thought I did paste that paste bin. Maybe I didn't. I think it's literally the paste bin above there, but maybe you missed it. All right. Books.php. There you go. There's that paste bin. All right, so the next piece we need, obviously, is the insert books. So insert books.php. I'm not going to go through the whole validation piece, only because it's a lot. I mean, it's only one field, though, actually. Yeah, what am I doing? I'm being way too lazy. So that's the thing, too. So when we're hitting these processing pages, you also want to make sure the user is logged in, because you don't want them to be able to actually process anything unless they're logged in. So we can still get away with all these pieces. However, we don't need to make sure the session is already started, right? We just do session start because it's at the top of the process page. We can just check to see if the user is logged in, and if they're not, we'll just redirect them right away, because if they're accessing this page, they're likely a hacker, right? So we can actually copy that information. This says if they're not set, we're going to remove this session, right? We're just going to redirect right back to the login.php page. So that takes care of that user automatically. Actually, even arguably, I would that's fine. We'll just redirect them to the login.php page. So any messages. Off you go, scumbag. I mean, that's kind of harsh. I'm kind of assuming they're a scumbag. They might not be. They might be just a very friendly person who bookmarked the wrong page. So this is going to be the title, right? And we can actually do the filter sanitize string right here and sanitize it right off the bat. We don't even need to validate it. We'll just sanitize it. Right off the get-go, it'll be an empty string. We'll just say if empty, $title. It's the only thing we care about. Why did I put that bracket in the wrong place? We'll just do $_session errors equals you must have a title. We'll redirect to location to new book, not new boot. What were you thinking, tab 9? And obviously we're going to exit. Cool, there's our validation and our sanitization all done in one statement. Let's create our SQL. SQL equal. So that will be obviously insert into books, blah, values, blah. And we'll just put our cursors in here, like so. The only field we have is title. And obviously the only field we're going to bind is title. But that's not entirely true. We also have the the user ID. And this is how we're creating our connection. And that will bind to user ID. Actually, we don't even need to bind that one. That one we can pass in directly because we control it. We control this value because it's on our server itself. Why are you sketching out? Oh, because you want it wants the curly braces. Wants the Gallagher. Alright, so obviously this does nothing, right? We need to include our connection script, which usually I like to do above the SQL statement, above the things we're actually doing. There we go. And then we can go ahead and create our prepare. DBO, prepare, $SQL. Nice. So that's created our SQL statement. We've got it prepped. Obviously, we need to do our bind, which will just be, if I can type the correct things, title. So $title, obviously. And then we'll cast that to a string. Even though we've kind of already sanitized it anyways, it doesn't really matter, but we'll cast that to a string either way. Why is that glitching? Did I do that in the wrong order or something? Why are you freaking out? Expecting, unexpected colon, expecting thing. Oh, it's double colon, you numbskull. There we go. Too many languages floating around in this head of mine. We're going to execute. Right? And I mean, we could check and make sure that it went in properly and check for errors and all the rest of it, but we're not going to. We're literally just going to throw a header and relocate and let fails happen as fails happen. And that we're just going to send them right back to books.php, which makes sense because they should just go look at the books. And we'll exit. Yes, I'm creating a paste bin. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry about that. It tends to not actually give you all of the information you need, right? All right, let's see if that actually works. So if I go to books, which I don't have a link for right now, we should probably create a link on the profile page. So in the profile page where that button is down at the bottom where it says log out, we could just Alt-Shift down, create a link to books.php, and books. There we go. There's a books button now. Isn't that awesome? I'm going to click the books button. Hello, Engineer Singh. Here are your books. Obviously, I can't see any books, so we should create a link on this page that says create new book. That would be helpful. So if we go to books.php, and again, same thing down at the bottom here. Just duplicate that. Do new book.php. New book. There we go. Yay, we have a title thing here. The only thing kind of sucks is it's in the container, but it doesn't seem to be abiding the container, which is weird. Maybe it's just too far over. Why is it like literally the whole length of the container? Something's weird here. It looks correct, but it's not following things it's supposed to follow. Something's broken. Not that it matters. Correct it anyways. Alright, so what's my favorite book? It's been a while. I do like... wow, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Why did it take me so long to remember that? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So if I create that, it's going to insert book.php. Did I not call it book? No, I called it insert books. Let's rename that and call it insert book.php. Let's try that again. Great. All right, cool. Got some errors. Errors are better than nothing. So undefined index user ID on line 24. Did I do something stupid? Yep, I certainly did. That should be user ID. Right? Because it's the user. We've got that reference point, and then we're accessing the ID from that reference. Uncaught PDO, string data right truncated on line 29. Data too long for the column title at row 1. Did I do something dumb and make it so that the... Oh, it's only 30 characters. Why did I make it only 30 characters? That's silly. Alter that table. Let's make it 1,000 characters. Your title can be 1,000 characters long. Add that alter statement and hit apply, and then you're good to go. So just add that into your SQL. Let's try that again. Yay! It liked it. But we still can't see our books. Then you need a text field. I'm going to create another new book. A Wrinkle in Time. Also one of my favorite books. Wrinkle in Time. And I'll do another one. Another Fine Myth. There we go. These are all of my books that Manjinder Singh wrote. So obviously we need some way to pull these books, right? We need to pull these books out and actually view them. So to do that, under the books.php, I'm just going to create a table striped, like so. And we're already grabbing the books. They're right up here. Now I just need to actually display them. And I'll just do that as... Oh, I could have just did it as a list, actually. Because we only have one field. But I mean, yeah, we'll make it nice. We'll make it nice. So we'll do a T-head with a TR and a TH. And this will be title. And then we'll do a T-body with a TR and a TD, and we need to wrap the body. So we'll do a PHP for each. Books as book. Whoops. And then end that for each, right? Without the semicolon. I mean, it's not going to break if you put the semicolon in there, but it just looks like, I don't know, looks amateurish. $, book, title. There we go. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, A Wrinkle in Time. So this is associated with this user, right? Which means that if I log in as a different user, I won't be able to see this user, right? I'm just going to give you the table because we already have the code for the books.php. There you go. So we need to be able to see if this actually registers as another user. So if I log out and log in, I'll log in as Alec. ASDF, log in. So now I'm Alex, so I shouldn't see Manjinder's books. So if I click on books, see, I've got no books listed yet, right? So now I can create new books, right? War and Peace. And why not just choose all the really big ones, right? Art of War. There we go. So Alex got his 2 books in here. If I log out and I log in as Manjinder, and go to my books, you can see that I still have my books. So everything is nicely encapsulated to that user, and we're controlling that whole process by controlling to that user, right? And we've created this association, and they're being stored in the database as that association. So if I go to the database and we just view all the books we have, right? So you can see all the books are in here. The only thing that is differentiating which book is connected to which person is the user ID. That's what actually funnels it down and makes it so that it's easier to tell who's who. All right, so that's basically everything, and that was it. I wasn't even intending to do that. I was going to do that next week, but I figured why not just kill it right now in 30 seconds or less. I am going to push this code, obviously. Let's push all that up. And I will give you this link. Is there a way to click that link? What? That's stupid. Here's a link to all of our code for tonight. So next week, it's completely up to you. I have no requirements of you using GitHub or a live server for this course. However, if you join next week, you stand the chance of being able to, one, push your lab to GitHub, because we'll do that literally next week, and submit a live link. If you push your code to GitHub and submit a live link for your lab, I will give you bonus marks. Okay? So up to another 10 points for your bonus marks. If you submit your project to GitHub and then submit your project to a live link, I will obviously give you bonus marks as well. But if you don't want to attend class next week, there's no penalty to that, right? So there's no penalty in not being able to do those things, just so you're aware. So it's completely up to you. If you're bogged down and weighted down and you're just like, you know what, man, I need a break, then you can totally make that choice. The following week, do not forget this, the following week, let me pull it open. So this is the week that I'm talking about. The following week is what? What happens on the 19th? Super important. Yes, the final. The final is on the 19th. Do not forget. Make sure you show up. To those of you that are watching this YouTube video that aren't in the class today, make sure you show up. I will put out an announcement. There has been times that I have forgotten to do that, though. But I will put out an announcement to remind people, hopefully, if I remember. But yeah, and then the final will be I haven't decided. I'm either going to go practical, but because I have 4 classes all at once, it's going to be a super simple practical. That'll be just like, hey, here's the code base, go fix the code, submit it, cool, I'll mark it, and then off we go. Or it might be just a test, like done through Blackboard, like the testing systems, just basically quizzing you, where I just show you a little chunk of code, and then you choose what it does or what its outcome will be. I haven't decided. I kind of like both scenarios. Both are kind of practical and show you kind of what needs to happen. But one is definitely much easier to mark than the other. So I don't know. I'll come up with something. I'll let you guys know in advance in the announcement which it's going to be. Okay? Yeah. So if there's nothing else, you guys are welcome to leave. I will post the video.